Welcome to Renaissance Friday Forum. The presentation will begin at right now. Commander Tom Jones will be presenting Space, the Last Frontier. We may need it. Today's presentation is being recorded. See it on the Renaissance Society Forum channel on YouTube. If you have a question, there will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Type your question and click send. Questions will be answered at the end. Chat is disabled. If you'd like to turn closed captioning on or off, click on the CC live transcription button to show or hide subtitles. You can adjust the size of the closed caption using the subtitle settings button. And now I'd like to introduce Commander Tom Jones, who will be presenting the Space, the Last Frontier. We may need it. Tom Jones is the Executive Director of the Aerospace Museum of California, located at McClellan Park. He served 25 years in the U.S. Navy as an aviator, flight instructor, and lead operations research analyst for the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations, and then as commanding officer. He has flown over 4,100 hours in numerous types of aircraft, including fixed wing and helicopters, mostly in the Pacific Theater and the Persian Gulf during Desert Storm and Gulf War II. At the Aerospace Museum of California, Tom is focused on creating the finest science, technology, engineering, and math, also known as STEM education, and student learning facility on the West Coast. He will bring us up to date as some of the most exciting space events happening today and share his love for the incredible learning opportunities at the Aerospace Museum of California. Tom, the screen is yours.
All right, thank you, Bob, and thank you everyone for attending today. It's very exciting to have you here, and we've got a couple of poll questions to get the presentation kicked off with. So if we could put those poll questions up, we will go through those real quick. So just want to get an idea what your background is, a little bit of your background, and hopefully it'll help steer the presentation a little bit. Got people logging in, and one person's been to space. That's great. Nice to have an astronaut in the audience. And we've got a lot of people very interested in the topic. And it looks like our astronaut is definitely a space expert. Thank you for being here today. All right, got 86% of the vote, or almost 90% of the vote. We'll go ahead and start closing out the polling here in just another minute. Got another 10 people or so that if you want to jump in on the poll, go ahead and do so. Looks like most of us have not been into space. I know we probably all like to. A lot of novices and interested personnel in the audience. Again, thank you for being here today. You know, I don't consider myself an expert. I'm probably more of a, novice to intermediate person. I run the Aerospace Museum, and I try and learn as much as I can. I've got a ton of people involved. We've got actually 3 NASA solar system ambassadors at the museum. So if we've got really tough technical questions, I go to them, or one of my favorite astronauts is out at UC Davis, and he's on our board as well, Steve Robinson. He's just fantastic. So anyway, just wanted to say thanks to everybody for participating in that, and let's share the results of our poll. I think we've got final results here. Everybody participated, and actually we've got 4 people who've been to space. That's fantastic. Okay, thank you, Bob. Let's let's move on to the next section. I don't know if I just click that to close that. Okay, I think that's what we do. So let me share my screen and we'll get started with this presentation real quick. I believe you can see that. I want to note that, any opinions that are expressed here in this presentation are my personal opinions and not the opinions of our government or NASA or JPL, anybody in the space industry. It's information that I've gained over a lifetime of experience. I'm just fascinated with the whole topic. I think it's fantastic what we're doing in space today. And I'd like to share some of those exciting things with you. So space, in my opinion, is truly the last frontier. Hopefully we're not going to need it someday, but if we do, it's probably our best hope for humanity. If anything really bad happens on Earth and we need it. So before we get too far into the presentation, I wanted to talk about the museum real quick and its role in our community here in Sacramento. I serve as the executive director of the Aerospace Museum of California. We're a STEM education museum, and we are committed to inspiring students to explore, dream, and discover anything related to STEM. We have lots of hands-on learning, and our mission is to honor the past and inspire the future through STEM education. We're a Smithsonian affiliate, and we consider ourselves the Smithsonian Museum in your neighborhood. So please come visit. We got a lot of great stuff, space-related things, aircraft, aerospace related things, and just a lot of interesting things to learn about there at the Aerospace Museum. STEM is critical to our future, to our nation's future, our children's future, everything about workforce development and the future of America's economy. It's really, it's very STEM oriented, and we need to continue to highlight that and educate children to be interested in at least everything that they do involves STEM today. So it's really important for them to at least get some insight into STEM careers. We've got a lot of things to offer at the museum. As I discussed, we've got the Hubble Space Telescope exhibit. Just a few months ago, we have the Makani energy kite. It was a Google experimental company, Makani, and that is just last week, we just hung it from the ceiling, and it's very exciting to see. It's the world's largest kite, and it actually generated enough power for 300 homes. Just an incredible story behind that. I encourage everybody to come out and see it. We've also recently acquired the bubble ship, which if you ever watched the movie Oblivion, we have that bubble ship that's in the movie Oblivion, and it's not on display yet, but it will be soon. And we have not been open inside, but we expect sometime in the next week or two, probably, we're hoping by mid-March to be fully open again inside the building. We have a large outdoor air park, and that has been open most of the time throughout COVID because it was a large outdoor space and people could easily physically distance from each other. We have one of the largest engine collections in North America, and just a lot of great stories to tell. We host school groups, group tours, private events. We're a really unique and exclusive location. If you're looking for a place for a private function, give the museum a call and we'll work with you to help you get that set up. This is a picture of our air park, the backyard, as I like to call it. The property is 7 acres. And so, pre-COVID, I think we could host up to about 8,000 people. Today, it doesn't seem busy there unless we've got 1,000 or more people in the audience. But today, we kind of limit the backyard to about 400 people. We actually figured out that we can physically distance 400 people in just the backyard and another 250 inside the building. So we can host large events even in the midst of COVID. All right, we've got excellent guest speakers at the museum, NASA pilots and astronauts, World War II veterans of all kinds. Really interesting people that come speak with our group at the museum, and maybe we'll get the Renaissance Society to help us out with that as well. Lots of family fun activities, science shows, open cockpit days, aerospace camps throughout the entire summer, and that registration just opened. So if you've got kids or grandkids, please check out our website for summer camp registration. We expect it to sell out quickly because of everything that's been going on this past year or so. There's a huge need for summer camps. And then finally, the Hubble exhibit. We expect it to reopen anytime in the next few days, as soon as the health order allows museums to open on the inside again. This is an incredible exhibit. We have amazing docents that just do a really good job of telling the story of Hubble and its importance for our country and the world. Okay, here's some other last minute information. That's the website, the location. We're out of McClellan, the old McClellan Air Force Base. During the week, we're just hosting school tours, and we actually do virtual field trips and virtual events. So if your school or students would like a virtual event, please check with our front desk and we'll get you lined up for that. We are open to the public Saturday and Sunday. And all of our COVID protocols are in place. Okay, next slide. Today's agenda, we're going to cover the evolution and commercialization of the space industry and its real strong importance to our nation and our future. We'll also cover some current and future missions, and then we'll get into a couple of strategic implications of what all this might mean to all of us. All right, I love this little guy. He's got his mask on. He's got his bottle of Lysol, and I think he heard about COVID. That's our Perseverance rover that just landed on Mars, and our little Martian friend is squirting that down. So anyway, hopefully we'll get past this COVID thing soon. Hopefully everybody's getting their shots, and we'll get to some herd immunity shortly. Okay, it started with one little bleeping ball that Russia sent up, so 1957, and then to our first steps on the moon. We are truly living in one of the most miraculous times in human history, which is the space age. Mankind has had a romantic adventure with space, and in my opinion, I think it's deeply rooted in our biology and our desire to explore and discover. All of this really started to accelerate in 1982 when President Ronald Reagan, he set a national goal to create a private sector that was deeply involved in civilian space activities. Up to that point, NASA and just governments had the money and the power to get things done and launch aircraft into space, but they saw an opportunity to create private sector involvement. And once we created a national goal that kind of directed all national resources toward that goal, it took about 6 more years, but then President Reagan signed the presidential directive on national space policy. And that required all of our government agencies to purchase launch services from commercial companies. Well, 35 years later, the space industry is absolutely hot. It's the commercialization of space has led to just hundreds of advancements and really countless opportunities for future generations of Americans. We've got all these companies that are participating with getting aircraft into space. All of them are innovating at just a breakneck pace, and they're competing for very large government contracts. In fact, most of us are probably old enough to remember Tom Cruise in the movie Top Gun. Well, he's doing another movie in space on board the International Space Station And I think that's going to have the same kind of impact on the space industry and all kids wanting to be astronauts, kind of like Top Gun did for my generation. It's exciting. It's a very exciting time, and I think it's a great thing that for us to be living through right now. We've got a lot to learn and a lot to explore. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple of early milestones in space, and just this is probably especially for our astronauts or people that have been into space before. This is just a refresher of what's happened from the history timeline. But it's hard for me to believe, as I was going through this brief, I realized that the it's been 20 years since we first landed on the asteroid Eros, 20 years since Dennis Tito, as the first space tourist, he went into space. He paid $20 million to go to the International Space Station. You know, it's important, I think, to have a perspective on these early milestones to see how far we've come. And then disaster struck in 2003 with the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster. You know, it set our space program back a few years, and it was just tragic for everybody involved. And hopefully we learned really important lessons from that. Well, at the same time, that same year, China launched its first manned space flight. You think about that, and that was 18 years ago. And when China did that, and they've consistently grown and improved their space program ever since. They were the third nation to have independent human space flight, and they have not turned around or stopped. They just kept trucking. And in 2003, this is astronaut Yang Lui. He was the first Chinese astronaut into orbit. Well, NASA continued with 2 rovers to Mars, continued our space exploration and development of our programs. And we launched these twin rovers to Mars and landed them on opposite sides of the planet within about a month of each other. It was very, very interesting. They bounce landed on giant airbags. It was our first attempt to try and do something like that. And they survived. They had a lot of interesting experiments and did great work and brought great knowledge and research to our understanding of Mars. The very next year, commercialization really started to accelerate. And in 2004, the X Prize was developed, and Spaceship One claimed the $10 million X Prize. That X Prize today is valued at $100 million for the X Prize. So you can tell, you know, this is a huge incentive for companies to get involved in this industry, for them to create the needed science, this needed STEM to make this happen. But that Spaceship One, it made 2 flights in 2 weeks. Astronaut Brian Benny set altitude records, and he really, truly, that team ushered in the space age and privatization, and really highlighted and advanced our commercial supply to the International Space Station and other private manned space flights. Almost at the same time, we had Cassini, the Cassini probe, heading towards Saturn, and it spent 13 years exploring Saturn and the rings of Saturn, and then it deployed the Huygens space probe, which went to Saturn's moon, Titan. Titan is a huge moon, and it actually became the first alien moon besides our own moon that we landed a probe on. That next year, Huygens descended for 2.5 hours through the Titan atmosphere. It's very dense, and it parachuted through the Titan atmosphere, taking lots of high definition images showing mountains and river channels and small rocks, and what appeared to the scientists to be possibly liquid methane. It was the very first time that scientists got a look at the surface of a moon other than our own. And again, keep this in perspective, that was 16 years ago. imagine how far we've advanced now. Imagine where we're going to be in the next 16 years. It's just incredible. Okay. The very next year, we restarted the shuttle program, and then that program ended in 2011. A lot of people ask me, why did we stop the shuttle program? Well, the common knowledge is that it was just too expensive. It really probably never met its full promise for low-cost access to space. In spite of the reusability of the space shuttle. Commercialization has done amazing things to really build and create that reusability, and I'll get more into that in just a few minutes. All right, that same year, we impacted the comet Tempel 1 with the Deep Impact Space Probe. It slammed into Tempel 1, and on its way into the comet, it took incredible high definition pictures of the impact, the comet, the impact, and the debris that it left behind after the impact. It was built for that. It had many discoveries, including ice water on a comet that's, spinning around our sun. Almost the same time, we had the Stardust mission, and that collected samples from the comet Wild 2. Those samples were then returned to Earth and then analyzed, and we found primitive materials in that stardust that suggest the formation of our solar system. Like most journeys of exploration and discovery, you don't always know what the final goal is at every single step along the way. A lot of times you don't know what you don't know. But I think our goal has become quite obvious and clear the more that we've been discovering over the last several years. And that goal and purpose today is to follow the water. We're finding water all over the universe, and that water comes in three forms, as we all know. But what we also know is where there is water, there may be life. And that life may be current and alive today, or that life might be ancient life that is since extinct. But it would be important to know that from our knowledge of our own solar system, and then furthermore, the universe. So we continue to explore the planets and all over our solar system, including Mercury. We sent the Messenger spacecraft to Mercury, which did high definition mapping of Mercury and found a polar ice cap on the second hottest planet in our solar system. The average temperature of Mercury is 800 degrees, which just amazes me that there could be ice there. But how that happens is essentially there are large craters on Mercury, and the sunlight is shadowed. And where those shadows exist, we believe, or scientists believe, that those cold areas have allowed ancient ice to be preserved. Even though Mercury is so close to the sun, that ice may have fallen from comets that were passing by Mercury, and then fallen into that area and just been accumulated over many millions and billions of years. But it's fascinating to think that there's ice on a planet where its average temperature is 800 degrees. This is a depiction of what Messenger sent back, the image that Messenger sent back, and it's got those ice deposits near the polar area of Mercury. It's just fascinating to think that there's water out there on Mercury. Okay, we continue to discover and continue to go out and explore our own solar system, and we sent the Mars Curiosity rover in 2012. It investigated the Martian climate and geology. It searched for signs of life and water. It was as large as a car, and it had an advanced array of instruments on board. And basically its goal was to follow the water and hopefully find a place for future sites of human missions to Mars. You know, water is considered one of the most fundamental requirements for life. And we think that Mars might have, at one point, we strongly believe that Mars was rich in liquid water, a lot like Earth. And we think that it might be the nearest planet that we could possibly habitate with a colony. So just after that Mars mission and the New Horizons spacecraft was flying out for 9 years and 4.5 billion miles, New Horizons flew all the way out to Pluto. At that time, it was the fastest spacecraft ever built. It has recently been replaced in that regard by the Parker Solar Probe, which was launched last year and is 8 to 10 times faster than the New Horizons. But New Horizons did incredible things for our knowledge of Pluto and those outer planets across our solar system. New Horizons approached Pluto within 8,000 miles of Pluto, and it gave some high resolution images of Pluto and its largest moon, Charon. It also found evidence of water. Fascinating that all the way out in the farthest reaches of our solar system, we are finding water. So a little bit closer to Earth, but no less important, you know, how are we going to sustain a human colony anywhere else other than Earth in the future? Well, we're going to have to be able to grow food. And so the crew of the International Space Station grew some food in a system called Veg-1. Took 15 months to grow red romaine lettuce. And then the crew, Expedition 44's crew, became the first astronauts to eat food that was grown in space. This is all obviously necessary for future human expeditions. And it'll be interesting to see how we can get a full-blown garden going and how long it takes things to grow in deep space. The next most important thing was the reusable rockets that SpaceX launched. You know, again, privatization and commercialization are dramatically driving down the costs and creating tons of opportunity for space exploration. If you haven't seen that, please go check it out. Those rockets are absolutely incredible. They're coming back and being reused over and over again. So just last year, SpaceX was the first private company to launch astronauts into space to the International Space Station. This effort marked America's return to a manned space program since 2011. It was the first flight since the Space Shuttle program ended in 2011. Very, very important to our future and to our continued exploration of space. All right, so let's move into current and future NASA missions. You know, currently, I hope everybody got a chance to see Perseverance on February 18th when it landed on Mars. I've got a great video that I'm going to show you in just a minute. But on board of Perseverance is a little helicopter called Ingenuity, and it's got an amazing story. And those two things are currently on Mars right now. The Parker Solar Probe is doing laps around the sun as we speak. That's a whole nother story. I'm not going to go into all the details of that today. That could be another brief at some point. I love that story, but suffice it to say that the sun, what they found is the sun is hotter about 3 million miles away from the sun than it is on the sun, which would be akin to sitting by the campfire when you're out camping in the summertime with your kids, sitting by the campfire and having your face melt off because it would be cooler to stick your face in the fire. That's what our sun is like. Scientists are learning amazing things about our sun. The Webb telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, is going to be launched this year, we think around Halloween, hopefully. Also this year is Artemis 1. I got a great video on that for you. And then I'm going to talk about the Europa Clipper, which we expect will be launched sometime in the mid 2024 range. Our main goals at this point are find the water, find life, and then colonize Mars. Okay, the Mars 2020 mission, Perseverance. Like I said, it has 4 important goals. Did life ever exist on Mars? Can we characterize the climate and the geology of Mars? And can we prepare for human exploration and colonization of Mars? This rover has dozens of groundbreaking technologies on board, including 19 cameras, and it's doing an incredible work, and its entry into the Martian atmosphere was really impressive. I'll flip to the next slide and show you a quick video. So that's called
when Curiosity landed on Mars in 2012. Work began on the next Mars rover mission.
Through the Martian
Though
atmosphere
Perseverance looks similar to Curiosity, it's a big step forward in technology and in our goals for Mars exploration. First, there was a lot to learn from Curiosity, both from its scientific mission and from how the rover performed on the surface. The engineers at JPL noted that Curiosity's wheels were sustaining damage from sharp rocks, so they got to work designing new wheels for Perseverance.
Sound is not good.
And as Curiosity returned data to Earth, it provided information that helped shape the mission goals of Mars 2020. From here, JPL scientists and engineers designed the technologies they wanted to have on Perseverance. Technologies to look closely at rock samples and to stash the most interesting ones, to look underground, to test the air, and to see every part of the environment around the rover. They built and tested these technologies: Sherlock, RimFacts, Meta, and they integrated them into Perseverance.
Ground-penetrating radar.
On July 30th, the Mars 2020 mission was ready to go.
And liftoff.
The spacecraft lifted off the pad at Cape Canaveral, Florida, and began its nearly 7-month journey to the Red Planet. The Atlas V rocket lifted the payload into space and separated, completing the launch part of the mission. Now it was on its way, the cruise phase. The launch date was not picked randomly. Every 26 months, there is an optimal window when the trip to Mars is the most efficient.
I don't know if you can hear the video.
What we see here is a transfer orbit,
this is showing
a planned path between 2 moving objects, Earth and Mars.
Earth to Mars.
The spacecraft is traveling at about 50,000 miles per hour, or over 80,000 kilometers per hour.
Mars.
Because we know the exact distance, trajectory, and speed, we already know that we will land on Mars on February 18th. As we get closer to Mars, the cruise phase ends and the approach phase begins. On February 18th, we will begin entry, descent, and landing. Every part of this is autonomous. No human is controlling the landing. First, we jettison the cruise stage, which we brought all the way to Mars but don't need anymore. Now our craft looks more like the capsules that return to Earth.
Even though the Martian
and even though the atmosphere is thinner on Mars, entry is still hot and dangerous. The capsule has to turn to an entry attitude, turning the heat shield to enter the atmosphere safely. Once we're inside the atmosphere, the goal is to slow down, which isn't easy in a thin atmosphere. Automated programming prepares for the jettison of the heat shield. Then the parachute is deployed. This slows things down a lot more.
It's the largest
the heat shield is released.
Ever designed.
The surface of Mars is approaching quickly. Then the back shell and parachute is jettisoned, and retro rockets fire. Our descent has now slowed to a manageable speed. The camera searches for the correct place to touch down. Once ready, the sky crane activates, lowering the rover to the ground. Once sensors indicate that the rover is safely on the surface, the descent stage separates and does a flyaway, crash landing far away from the rover. And here we are on Mars.
All right, Also on board Perseverance is the helicopter Ingenuity. Call sign is Jenny. And Jenny will be the first powered flight on an alien world. We expect the first flight of Jenny sometime in summer 2021. What's really interesting to me about this aircraft, first of all, it's very light. The Martian atmosphere is extremely thin. Flying on the surface of Mars, flying this aircraft on the surface of Mars is akin to flying a helicopter at 100,000 feet on Earth. On Earth, our world record for helicopter flight is about 40,000 feet for helicopter flight. You can imagine how thin the atmosphere gets at 100,000 feet, and flying a helicopter at that altitude is just, we do not currently have that technology. So great video coming up on this. And I would, if you've got interest in this area, please go check it out, because there's a lot of great information out there on this aircraft. So imagine the exploration that's going to happen with Jenny. We already know that there's ice on Mars, and on the polar areas of Mars, we think there's water in other places around Mars. And we're going to continue to follow the water, and Jenny's going to help every step of the way. It's going to be very exciting to see the research and the incredible things that we learn from Perseverance and Ingenuity. All right, so as we continue to follow the water, scientists have learned that there is more water in the oceans of our solar system than there is on Earth. It was blown away when I learned all this over the past several months. but it's just incredible because Earth has about 0.02% water of its mass. And when we look at Europa, it's 6.4% water. Ganymede is 5.4%. Titan is 11% liquid water. And obviously we think that in Mars's past, before it became an arid planet, it had water as well. So this is kind of the "we may need it" part of the brief, or part of the presentation. Water is almost everywhere. Just ask yourself, how many of our solar system moons today are believed to contain oceans of liquid water? And that is 7. 7 oceans, or 7 moons out there in our solar system have liquid water on them. So that's an upcoming mission that NASA has, is the Europa Clipper. And Jupiter's moon, Europa, is smaller than our moon, but it's larger than Pluto. And we're planning to send a clipper there in the next few years. As we move towards that goal, one of the most interesting things that you'll see, and this all comes from probes that have already been sent past Europa, but we believe that Europa's got an icy shell that poses challenges, but also promise for finding liquid water in other parts of our universe. It also increases the plausibility of life. But it blocks us from getting a good look at what's going on underneath that icy crust of Europa's. Scientists believe, I'm going to go into, let me show you the next slide. The Galileo Spacecraft did several flybys of Europa between 1995 and 2003. And what scientists think are going on there is that, from those observations, is there's this icy crust around Europa, and then covering either all or most of Europa is liquid water underneath that icy crust. The ice shell, they believe it ranges somewhere between 2 and 30 kilometers, which is about 1 to 18 miles thick. And so that presents quite a challenge for getting through that. But scientists have come up with some creative things, and I'll show you that in just a moment. This is a picture of what Galileo sent back. It was showing that icy shell with potentially what scientists believe is a large liquid water lake through that shell. These colors indicate some topographic height changes relative to the background terrain. The purple and red indicates very high terrain, and they think that may be some type of a buried lake. So as activity, either thermal or other types of tidal activity, is going on on Europa, you got to remember, you got the biggest planet in our solar system is near Europa. And so that's going to have a very large gravitational effect. It's going to create tides. It's going to create all kinds of things that will very much dramatically change what's happening under that icy shell. And so these areas may break apart, and the ice may be thinner in some areas than others. This slide depicts 2 models for Europa's composition. One has kind of a warm, this hard and cold, brittle surface ice, the shell of Europa, with a warm kind of convecting ice down underneath that. The other model of Europa that scientists have come up with is that there's this icy crust with a liquid ocean underneath that ice. And again, that gravity from Jupiter could be causing all types of movement and change. And that tidal pull and tug is going to create a lot of tidal energy, a lot of mechanical energy, friction, and heat that possibly helps maintain that liquid water beneath the icy shell of Europa. Kind of like, if you think about the Arctic Ocean, it's frozen on top. We've got a shell of frozen ice on top, but there's liquid water underneath that on Earth at the North Pole. Scientists also believe that the tidal surge may interact with rocks on the ocean floor of Europa and create hydrothermal vents, releasing more heat and more energy, which are all components for life. But for the very first time in history, we've got, excuse me, we've got the knowledge and the tools to discover life outside of our own world. And now we've got a pretty good idea of where we might find that life, either on Mars or on Europa, in this giant oceany world of Europa. So stay tuned. That's launching in 2024. This is an artist's depiction of a tunnel bot, which is what we believe will help us get a better idea of the, collect ice samples and get a better idea of a possible ocean world on Europa. And it'll be an interesting concept if that, when that comes to pass. All right, back in the day, in 1491, everyone knew the world was flat, and that all changed the next year. Everybody knew that Mars was crisscrossed with canals. In 1902, everyone knew that man would never fly. And in 2008, everyone knew that Earth was the only solar system location with liquid water. That is not true. We have been proven to be false now. And in fact, liquid water seems to be throughout our solar system. So why is this important? Well, it's because these are the components needed for life as we know it. Humans are made up of 60% water, and liquid water allows biochemical reactions to happen, and with those essential chemicals of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and an energy source, life develops. On Earth, that happens through photosynthesis, but then we also have extremophiles living in very harsh, very extreme conditions without photosynthesis in several locations around our Earth. They receive their energy from some other source rather than the sun. It could be volcanic or hydrothermal. There's lots of other energy sources out there. And we think, planetary scientists think that may be the case and may be happening in several locations throughout our solar system. So life may be more common than we once thought. We had a lot of discoveries over the last 10 years, and obviously human life is very special, but at the microbial level, life may be a lot more common across our solar system than what we realized. Again, we're following the water throughout our solar system. So, liquid water, what we found is that water on other planets has become one of the most profound discoveries in the space age. Here's a quick slide talking about where scientists have found water throughout our own solar system. It's to be discovered right now, whether or not Jupiter, Saturn, and some other planets have it, but there's a lot of interesting discoveries there. Okay, so how do we get humans to these places? Well, it's going to start with the Artemis program. Artemis was the sister of Apollo, and everybody remembers the Apollo missions. Well, NASA is going to land the first woman and the next man on the moon by 2024. And what we learn on these missions around the moon, on the moon, is going to allow us to take the next big step, which is sending astronauts to Mars. We want to build sustainability and it's going to start with this program. So here's a quick video on the Artemis Program.
50 years ago. 50 years ago, we pioneered a path to the moon. The trail we blazed cut through the fictions of science and showed us all what was possible.
It's very pretty out here.
Today, our calling to explore is even greater. To go farther, we must be able to sustain missions of greater distance and duration. We must use the resources we find at our destinations. We must overcome radiation, isolation, gravity, and extreme environments like never before. These are the challenges we face to push the bounds of humanity. We're going to the moon to stay by 2024, and this is how.
This all starts with the ability to get larger, heavier payloads off-planet and beyond Earth's gravity.
For this, we designed an entirely new rocket.
The Space Launch System. SLS will be the most powerful rocket ever developed.
And with components in production
And more in testing?
This system is capable of being the catalyst for deep space missions
we need a capsule.
that can support humans from launch
through deep space and return safely back to Earth.
For this, we've built Orion.
This is NASA's next-generation human space capsule.
Using data from lunar orbiters that continue to reveal the moon's hazards and resources.
We're currently developing an entirely new approach to landing and operating on the moon.
Using our commercial partners to deliver science instruments and robotics to the surface, we are paving the way for human missions in 2024.
Our charge is to go quickly.
So since we're getting a little close on time, I want to wrap this up as quickly as I can. But one thing I want to point out is that these are the astronauts that have been selected for the Artemis team, and 7 of these are women. It's just amazing that we've got so much activity going on as we move further and further into space and exploring our own solar system. Let's pause this presentation, and Bob, if you want to take me back, we'll take any final questions.
Lori, you're muted.
Yeah, okay, got it. Okay, this is Lori instead of Bob.
So, Lori, I'm sorry.
No problem.
No, if it was me ending that, but
no, we're good. We do have a number of questions. So Joyce asks, what is the definition of space? She thought the poll question was a trick question, and if she had flown in an airplane cross country or in the world, you'd have been in space.
Oh.
So what's your definition?
The technical definition of being in space is, I believe it's 100 kilometers, and I'm probably wrong on this, but I have to look it up, but it's 100 kilometers above Earth. That's the edge of space.
All right. So thank you. Okay, we have another one. What are your thoughts on the manned mission to Mars? You talked about it as part of the Artemis project, but how long do you think it will take to get there? And then what's the time to get over to Mars?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest, it's one of the biggest challenges that we have right now is, Scott Kelly. I had the opportunity to talk with Scott Kelly a couple of years ago. He was the astronaut that spent the longest period of time in space. It was a little over a year. And when he came back, he had a lot of bone loss because they didn't have gravity. And we need gravity to maintain our bone structure in the human body. So they believe that the trip to Mars would be about 4 months. But then once we get there, we've got a little bit of gravity. I'm not sure exactly how the Martian gravity compares to Earth's, but it's going to be an important aspect of this manned mission. So how long is it, I would suspect that probably by the early 2030s, we may be sending a manned mission to Mars.
Great. So Carol has, this is a follow-up question about the planets being hottest, being closest to the sun. So her question was, if Mercury is closest to our sun, but is the second hottest planet, is Venus the hottest?
Venus is the hottest, and Venus's temperature is about 900 degrees Fahrenheit, which is even hotter than Mercury. I was surprised by that as well when I started researching and studying all this. That's one of the things that the Parker Solar Probe is trying to discover is why it's so much hotter out away from the sun than it is on the surface of the sun or close by the sun. It's fascinating. The scientists are fascinated by that. It doesn't make sense.
So here's another question, and it's regarding the International Space Station. It says, does it orbit the Earth like a satellite, and how far from Earth is the space station?
That's a great question. I believe the International Space Station is about 200 miles above us in space. If anybody can look that up and Google it and send it to the group, that would be great. I don't know exactly what the altitude of that is, but it's up there. And what was the other part of the question?
Oh, well, I just missed it. I think it was, how far it is, and did it orbit? Oh, yeah.
Yes, it does orbit the Earth. And I believe if you've got a good telescope, I think you can see it.
All right, here's another question. How do they record the sounds of the Ingenuity helicopter?
They've got all kinds of sensors on board, the Ingenuity helicopter and Perseverance. And I believe they have a sound sensor as well, a microphone that'll pick up that sound. And, we're looking more for the pictures, the images that are going to come off of Ingenuity. But I would think that Perseverance has probably got a sensor to capture all that. They're taking pictures of each other. I think the first thing that they're going to do is do a joint selfie of each other.
Well, that's going to wrap up our time for questions. I want to thank you. I was able to go and visit the museum in October when there was that brief time that the museum was allowed to be open. And the Hubble exhibit was wonderful. And what I really found fascinating is we had a medic volunteer out in the parking lot where all the aircraft, and I felt like we got a personal tour and history of all the aircraft. That was probably my favorite part of visiting the museum.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have a lot of people, we've got amazing volunteers at the Aerospace Museum. They come in and just have so much knowledge, really deep and interesting things to talk about, whether it's the aircraft or the space, the rockets, all the different space things that we have. It's fantastic. It's a real treasure in our community, and I hope everybody gets a chance to see it.
All right, well, I'm going to sign off and turn it over to Bob.
All right, thank you, Lori.
Well, thank you, Tom. That was a great presentation.
Well,
the Renaissance Society has made a donation of $25 to the Seth Nelson Student Emergency Grant Fund as a token of our appreciation. This grant fund assists students who experience financial emergency or unanticipated expenses during short-term financial hardships.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Today's presentation was recorded. You can view it two separate ways: on the Renaissance Society Forum channel on YouTube or from the Renaissance website. Also today, we're asking for contributions to the Food Pantry for Students, ASI Incorporated. They still need our support. Consider donating the first class of every month. Next Friday's forum will be Judge Brian Van Camp and confronting and controlling pandemics and insurrections, continuing civil rights issues in the 2020s. Please look forward to attending that.